Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We're also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are recapping all Week 12 action. But first, we have a little bit of league news going on right now. Jeff, the Giants, per request of the quarterback, have released Daniel Jones. So he has now not only been released, he has cleared waivers and is free to sign with any team. Where do you think he's going?
Well, we have heard he is definitely not going to the Raiders. They were interested in him. He wants to sign with a contender. So that leaves very limited options. And you would have to think a team like the 49ers would be looking at him. You'd have to think maybe the Ravens would need a backup quarterback going into the playoffs. The Eagles should look into him. They've made a career this year of taking a former Giant and turning them into a superstar in Philly. So why not Daniel Jones also to go along with Saquon Barkley? What about you?
I think after you pointed out to me the other day, San Francisco makes the most sense to both play now and to play on a contender potentially. Outside of that, I think you'd be a much better backup in Buffalo over Trubisky, and he wouldn't have to move very far. Baltimore, he would be an upgrade at the backup spot there. I'm trying to think of any other contender spot that he would be good for.
You know, it'd be really funny, though. I don't know if it'll happen, but Miami behind Tua, like Tua insurance.
They're not quite in the contender realm yet, but they might crawl their way to playoffs.
They are on fire right now, quietly. So,
you know what a dark horse might be is Kevin O'Connell said a lot of nice things about Daniel Jones, so he could end up there potentially competing with Darnold for the starting job.
Yeah, I think Darnold's done enough to keep it for right now, so I think that would be more injury insurance because Darnold did miss a play this past week with an injury, so it could be an upgrade from Nick Mullins. But I did really like Nick Mullins throwing Justin Jefferson the ball last year because he would just chuck it up to him. It's my favorite quarterback that played for the Vikings last year. Other than Kirk Cousins, of course.
Other than Kirk Cousins? Okay. Oh, yeah, well, let's talk about your boy Justin Jefferson in that matchup a little bit later.
That was not pretty, but I did extend him in a dynasty league last week, so his contract probably would have went down a little bit, but that's the gamble that you take.
It is. But we've got more quarterback news here. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets may not finish the season together, Jeff. What's going on there?
So there were reports that came out this last week that Aaron Rodgers is injured. He may end the season on IR. He's resisting scans because he doesn't want the Jets to see how damaged his body is. I don't know if this is like a save face thing because Aaron Rodgers does seem pretty intent on playing in 2025. It does seem like it will not be with the New York Jets. So he is trying to line up the excuses right now to be able to get a starting gig for 2025. I do think there is a starting spot for him in the NFL in 2025, especially with a weaker college quarterback group coming in. But maybe it's Vegas. Who knows? There's a bunch of teams that could use a quarterback upgrade that Aaron Rodgers could be circling around next year. Maybe he'll end up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, playing with the best defense, and Russ and Fields are on one-year deals. So that rhymed unintentionally. But and then the other bit of news is that the Jets could cut Rodgers before the end of the season as well. That is on the table. I don't know if I see that happening, because what if Aaron Rodgers went to a team, let's say Brock Purdy was out for the year and he goes to the 49ers and wins the Super Bowl with them. I don't know if the Jets could handle that. And with all of this, Alex, I'll let you say what you think is going to happen in this situation, but I also want to know which team is more dysfunctional, the Jets or the Giants?
They'll just go in reverse order here, I guess. I think the Jets are more dysfunctional. I mean, look at the Giants in the mid 2000s getting 2 Super Bowl victories over Tom Brady and the Patriots in the middle of the Patriots dynasty. But of late, I think Jets ownership is the bigger problem. I think that the Jets GM has actually done a pretty good job with roster talent. Offensive coaching has been a problem there. And then the owner forcing trades for old quarterbacks and being upset when it doesn't work out is a real big issue. For me, I think with the Giants, the owner's he just doesn't really care as much. Like, he mildly cares, but he's not as invested. And he's made some bad decisions since their previous success and Eli retired. So, Jets, long story short, Jets. But going back to Rodgers, if they cut him or if they moved on from him in the offseason, I would think that a team like the Vikings or a team like Miami might be interested in him. He might be interested in San Francisco because that's his boyhood team, but it doesn't make sense for San Francisco.
It does if he's cheaper than Purdy.
It makes sense for the Vikings if they need another veteran while McCarthy develops still. Like, Minnesota could bring in Rodgers and they could trade Darnold if he has another year with them and get a whole bunch for him. And then they still have McCarthy, who is going to take some development to be the quarterback that you want. So that would be interesting. Other than that, I don't see any other situation for Rodgers to walk in on a good team.
Yeah, I don't either, but we also have seen our fair share of preseason and camp injuries, and all it takes is one injury, and he might have a starting spot quicker on a better team. So he may be a holdout a little bit longer for that reason. Maybe the Titans. You never know. But we always thought he could end up there, because wasn't he building a Nashville home?
Something like that, yeah. But it doesn't make any sense because they're better than people think they are, but they're nowhere near competing for anything. So that wouldn't make sense. And at this point, how many teams want to put a 40-year-old quarterback out there? It doesn't seem like a smart move.
No, I agree.
But I want him to complete his
interesting
Brett
to
Favre
see
arc.
what
I want him to complete his Brett Favre arc and go to the Vikings.
I know you do. But it'll be interesting to see like what spots will be available in the offseason. It'll be interesting to see what cuts happen. I know you suggested that Dak Prescott might be moving on from the Cowboys, even though he signed that extension. So we'll see if that is in fact a true statement, or maybe we'll.
All right. So we've got the Brock Purdy news. Do you think he's going to be playing soon, or do you think he's out for a while?
So he did practice earlier this week, but they are giving him off days after that, and we don't know how much he practiced. So, I mean, it could be just as simple as just throwing a football like, I practice, you know? So we don't know how intense it was. I mean, it's good that he's out there, but I don't really know if it's positive or not right now. He had the MRI. We don't know the results of the MRI. And we know that he immediately missed a game after that MRI. So that's all we know so far. They're being very cryptic of Purdy right now.
Well, I hope for their sake he can come back soon, or they can snag a better quarterback option than Allen this last week. So, all right, with that said, we can just go into the Snowfest, which was Thursday Night Football. Jeff, we had both initially had Pittsburgh. You changed your pick to Cleveland. You ended up getting it right. What did you make of this matchup?
Hey, it's that last second pick where I made a post on X, and yeah, there was one particular stat that I had heard last week that made me change it. Tomlin does worse on short rest. He does pretty good on regular rest, and he does great on extended rest. And that's because he doesn't change how he prepares for games. And basically, what that looks like moving forward is that will impact my picks moving forward. So, but it was a crazy snow game, as you said, where there were multiple late lead changes. It feels like more of the scoring happened when the snow happened. Like, I feel like it was a very defensive matchup, very low scoring until the snow happened. I don't know about you, but the snow makes football look so much more fun also. So I know it's
Fun.
cold, but it's a very good visual to look at.
It's cool sitting from the warmth of your couch, blanket or heating pad on, watching football that way, sure. But playing it is the second most fun, and then last is the fans who are in open stadiums sitting there in the cold with nothing keeping them warm other than maybe a hot chocolate. So it's a little mixed, but it was definitely something. I did not expect it to all of a sudden out of nowhere just completely come down real hard.
You know
But
what else I hear keeps you warm during a football game? Beer. Lots of beer.
I know one of the cooks in the Titanic survived the cold water by getting incredibly drunk, and his body just started like heating up. But it's a nice balance. Somehow it kept him alive. I can't remember the terminology for it, but
So if I'm ever sinking in an ocean and it's really cold, just drink as much as I can. Is that what you're telling me?
yeah, pretty much. If you're, up north where there's glaciers and icebergs and stuff like that, yes. If it's super cold, especially if you're sinking, you're probably gonna die anyway. So I mean, you just keep drinking. That was his thought process. He thought he was gonna die, so he just drank everything in the liquor cabinet. Ended up in the water. Ended up surviving. Kind of cool.
Yeah. It's got to help with buoyancy also, like more liquid inside of you. You got to be able to float a little bit better as well. But I digress here. Back to the game at hand. Nick Chubb didn't look great. This was the team that actually turned his foot sideways basically last year. But he did find the end zone twice, so his stat sheet's going to look better than he actually looked on the field. Cedric Tillman, your boy, he got concussed early, leaving his week 13 in doubt, but he will have the 10 full days to get healthy for this game. And it does seem like Jerry Jeudy is the Browns receiver to own. And before I turn it over to you, I'm giving a short week mulligan to Najee Harris. And Russ still looked good, even in a loss. Like, he was able to put up a lot of yards, and he'll need to convert those more to touchdowns starting next week. So we will see.
I think a lot of Russ's success was in the second half because he didn't look that good in the first half. But I thought Pittsburgh was still going to come back and win the game until, towards the end of the fourth quarter. So kudos for you for switching, Jeff. It was a tough divisional matchup on a short week and a snowy day, and you figured out Tomlin's weaknesses. Tomlin team weaknesses.
Yeah. So I know you always think that I'm stubborn and don't listen to anything, which is fine, but I am constantly looking for new information that makes sense so I could be a better predictor of things. So, and this was
why don't you make this next matchup make sense? Cowboys upset the Washington Commanders. We both picked Washington, and Dallas beat up on them and almost gave them back the game, and then Dallas clinches the game. What do you make of this matchup?
Washington is in a little bit of trouble right now. I wouldn't say that they're out of a playoff spot just yet, but they're getting closer and closer to falling out of the playoffs. And that's sad because they were off to such a hot, crazy start. And the game was crazy too because it had a great ending. It had a Terry McLaurin 80-yard touchdown. It had an onside kick it had an extra point that was missed that would have tied it. So it required Washington to go for an onside kick where the kicker just kicked it right down the middle, and it went to a guy who foolishly went and scored a touchdown, which I don't know how you tell a guy that's never scored a touchdown not to go score a touchdown, but that should have been the rule of law there. But on the other hand, you gave Washington the ball back down 8, and so they could have tied it up, but they didn't, and that's how the game ended. But it was a crazy game, and it was a pleasure to watch that game down the stretch. But we both ended up taking a loss on this, which is kind of surprising because it was a Cooper Rush game. And I think the Commanders' biggest issue in this game is they couldn't get their ground game going, and they ended up losing their top 2 backs in this game. They lost Brian Robinson early. He came back, but he left the game again. And they lost Austin Eckler as well to a concussion. So we're going to have to pay attention to their statuses going into this upcoming week. But on the flip side, Rico Dowdle ran the ball well, and it's no coincidence that led to a good offensive day as well as a victory for the Cowboys. And I think you're going to see that as a theme in a lot of these matchups this week.
I would say that Washington is very good about being able to score quickly on offense, and especially like a deep play, something like that. But Dallas really made up for it with their special teams. So the fumble kickoff return for Kavonte Turbin, that was incredible because thought he was about to lose it like on like the 1 yard line, and he picked it up and then took it all the way back. It's like Washington didn't even tackle him. And then they returned another kickoff for a 43-yard touchdown. So those are what kind of won it for the Cowboys. That and Washington's missed extra point to tie the game at the end of the 4th. But it looked competitive, and it was a weird score going into the half, 3-3. And then Washington scored, then Dallas scored 3 times, and Washington came back. Then Dallas scored, then Washington came back. Then Dallas finished it off at the end. It was really weird. A weird game, but it's the one time I cheered for Dallas.
Right? I know that you're kind of rooting for Washington's demise, but I still think that they're okay right now. I still have them entering as, I think, the 3rd wild card at an 11-6 record at the end of the year, and no other team is going to be within 2 games of that last wild card spot, and that includes the Buccaneers and the Seahawks.
I would say all of those teams are closer to like a 9-8 or 10-7. I don't think any of those, the teams that you just named, I don't think any of them are going to have 11 wins. Yeah, I think this game kind of solidifies it, in my opinion, that Washington isn't quite ready.
Understood. Anything else on this matchup?
Nope. It was a weird week, and there's a lot of upsets this week.
There was some, yeah. It's any given Sunday, and but this next matchup here we both got right. It was the Lions 24, the Colts 6. And Alex, I'm going to let you break this down because these are your guys. I mean, this wasn't the trouncing that the Lions have been putting on everyone else, but yeah.
Lions defense showed up really big in this one. They kept harassing Anthony Richardson, but Richardson is pretty good at avoiding sacks so far this year. Didn't allow any sacks. I thought Richardson played better than his passing percentage. There are a lot of drops, in my opinion. I saw Josh Downs drop a few, and I saw some other guys drop a few. But finally, a Michael Pittman week. Glad to see it. I'd be very curious how it works out for the Pittman versus tracker that you have, I feel like. But good for the Lions. They pretty much won it all around football this week in this matchup.
The Colts getting Jonathan Taylor 11 carries is ridiculous, especially in a closer matchup. Also ridiculous is Richardson's 39.3% completion percentage, which I know was you were touting his 75% completion percentage last week. So we have to talk about the good and the bad and the ugly. This was ugly. Drops were big for the Colts as well. And as you had mentioned, Pittman versus Higgins. Pittman did take a step forward in this matchup. but he did share the target lead with Downs, because I know that was your big thing last week, that Downs couldn't be the number one receiver because he didn't have the target share lead, and they were equal this week. So that is an interesting turn of events. So Josh Downs, like, the results weren't there, but the opportunities were there. So I think you got to still keep playing him if you don't have a better option. I think the same with Pittman. Do you think the Lions didn't run up the score this week? Do you think it's the heat that they've been getting for running up the score on the Jaguars the week before, or do you think they couldn't do it this week for some reason or another?
Well, you can only run up the score on the Cowboys or another cat team, and the Colts are not either of those. So I know they look like they would be the Cowboys with their little horseshoe logo, but I don't know. Maybe they just didn't have a grudge against the Colts. I would also point out that Jahmyr Gibbs had 21 rushes to David Montgomery's 8, which was really weird for this week, but I enjoyed it in a couple of my leagues.
So I know we're going to be recording another podcast with our predictions for next week, but I will give you an early prediction for next week. I think it'll be a Montgomery game on a short week because they play early on Thanksgiving, so it's a 5-day rest. I think Gibbs will take more of a back seat in this matchup because of his high workload this week. I think they're going to flip-flop because of rest, and they have a bigger plan than just this Thursday game coming up. So I think that this will be a game where Gibbs doesn't perform as well.
Maybe that's why they didn't run up the score, because they're coming up on a short week and they didn't want to tire everybody out.
Exactly. So I'm not telling you to bench Gibbs for next week, but I'm telling you to be very cautious and probably start Montgomery over him.
We'll see. I think even if Montgomery gets the rushing load, they'll use Gibbs out of the backfield and in tight spaces, or open spaces.
Yeah. All right. So we can hop over to the Chiefs at the Panthers. And this is a game where we thought the Chiefs would blow out the Panthers, but the Chiefs won late, 30-27 on a last-second field goal. Bryce Young has his best game as a pro, and he's earning a shot at the 2025 job. I don't know if you recall this, Alex. Very early in the season, I said he'd have to show me something by Thanksgiving in order to have this job. And I think he's showing me something by Thanksgiving. And it's interesting that this is happening in this exact order, but it does give me hope as a Panthers fan for the future. And Mr. Chuba Hubbard leads the way in Jonathan Brooks' debut. I do expect Hubbard to keep the job rest of the year. I think he's safe to start. There might be one Jonathan Brooks game in there just to kind of see what he can do. But overall, I could see this being a Hubbard job the rest of the way. I mean, they didn't pay him for nothing. And then Noah Gray is on fire. And I'll leave you with a question. Do you believe if Kelsey were to walk away from the game of football or not be a Chief next year, do you believe that Noah Gray could be the direct replacement for Travis Kelce?
Yeah, I think it's already that. I think it's interesting that Bryce Young almost had similar stats to Patrick Mahomes in this game, minus a couple touchdowns. If you would have just added a couple touchdowns, maybe one or two more catches, he would have had the exact same stats. So he's made a lot of strides since his benching and coming back, and I think that's a lot of good news. That is good news for Panthers fans out there, and I think that Canales and Bryce Young have shown that there's more coming around the corner in the near future, that this team can be salvaged and they can build upon this. One thing for me, I was very disappointed to see Jatavian Sanders get hurt, because I felt like he was building a rapport with Bryce Young, and he looked like he had a leg injury and got carted off. I still can't find anything on what it is yet. I don't know if you've heard anything as a Panthers fan. It is yet.
I have. He was actually at practice yesterday. We don't know if he stayed, but it was a neck injury, and he went to a local facility, and everything's positive, the results so far. So he seems like he's going to be okay. He may miss a game or two, but to your point with Bryce Young, it is very encouraging because he doesn't even look like the same quarterback that he was at the beginning of the year. So in 12 short weeks, he's metamorphosized into something completely different, which I didn't think I would ever say metamorphosized on a podcast, but here we are. Duh. So,
Well, I like that
yeah,
he's gone through adversity, been benched, but then fought back. Like he didn't let it break him. He's fought back on a team that's missing a lot of pieces, and he's been competing against a couple good teams so far. So it's very positive. I just don't understand why David Moore is the guy that's getting all the targets for the Panthers.
he likes them. I can't explain it, but he's actually converting his opportunities even on 50-50 balls. It's crazy. Turning back the
Yeah.
clock to remember when he was a pest in Seattle for a
Yeah.
bit there?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's just David Moore of all wide receivers on that team. Whatever. But I really like Ja'Tavion Sanders. So I'm glad that he is seemingly better and moving forward.
completely agree.
All right, what's the next matchup we have here? The Vikings at the Bears. We both went Minnesota. We both got very fortunate that Minnesota held on to this game. It seemed like the Bears came roaring back in the second half at the end of the fourth quarter and then almost came back in overtime and had yet another blocked field goal. Another field goal that was going to make a difference blocked. And I don't know what's going on with the holding or how Santos is kicking. I don't know what it is, but 2 blocked field goals in a row is one too many, probably two too many. Williams looked okay against a really good Vikings defense that blitzes pretty heavy. That's positive. Darnold hanging in there. And DJ Moore just won't go away, will he, Jeff? He always finds a way to blow up every now and then.
So I've been placing bets on him every week since the new offensive coordinator because I figured as a new OC, you're going to want to feature your prominent players. And I feel like they're forcing Caleb Williams to throw the ball to DJ Moore a lot more, which is making him startable and bettable right now because the betting books haven't caught up to his new usage.
Yeah. I think he's a athletic, talented player. I'm not sure that he really is the wide receiver one type of player, but he's in that same mold as AJ Brown and Nico Collins, where they're super athletic, big, explosive players, and you got to feed them for them to be relevant.
I agree. So what do you make of the Jefferson pulling a 2 for 27 and Addison going 8 for 162 and 1 and Hawkinson's going 7 for 114? Do you think this is just a spread the ball offense now, or do you think they had a game plan to keep Jefferson out of it?
I think it's a spread the ball offense now. I think that they've got so good passing weapons, and everyone's healthy now. No one's suspended anymore, and I think Jefferson will get his. But I think the Bears were making an effort to try to shut him down and try to shut down the whole offense by taking Jefferson out.
Yeah, so better days ahead for him, but Darnold really has some serious weapons right now. And if he can just keep it together, this team is postseason bound, first of all. Second of all, they could even upset someone in the postseason as well, in my opinion. They're only a game behind the Lions right now, too, and I believe they play the Lions again.
All right. We have a game that we can kind of breeze through here. The Patriots at the Dolphins. Dolphins pretty much controlled this game all the way through, winning 34-15. Neither team's run game got going. Miami's felt like it was a little bit better. But Ramondre Stevenson didn't get going at all in this game. And I kept checking up on it because I wanted him to get some points for me. All of New England's points came in the fourth quarter when they were down big. So there's really not much going on for this offense. And Miami looks like they're bouncing back finally to kind of make the playoffs. But I believe that we had a Tyreek Hill sighting this week. He actually caught passes. And then Jaden Waddle had 144 yards and a touchdown. Jonnu Smith, again, it looks like he's a starting tight end in fantasy right now. I think he's still in the top 10, top 9. So if you have him, you have to start him. And at this point, I'm considering starting him over like a Kelsey going forward. Yes, just the way it's been going, Jeff. It's the way it's been going.
So, I mean, Jonnu Smith is the number 4 tight end in fantasy this year. Kelsey's the number 5 tight end, so it's not crazy, but there's a world where you could have Brock Bowers and Jonnu, or George Kittle and Jonnu, and Trey McBride, who's number 4 or number 3. So just interesting that that is there. Tua has looked amazing after returning from the concussion. Maybe the concussion knocked something around in him. 4 touchdowns passing is crazy. Again, this is a theme right now. Neither team has ran the ball very well. And I think Drake May needs a run game in order for there to be any chance of success right now. And I think next year when you have Ramondre and Drake May have a whole offseason together, that's a combo. If you get another receiver in there, that's a combo that they might be undervalued next year, especially Ramondre Stevenson, and it might turn out better than expected for them. But Tyreek doesn't appear to be 100%, and I think Jonnu is benefiting from that. I think that he had a hand or a finger injury, and I think it's still healing. But yeah, the Dolphins are on a roll right now, and they have a all-important matchup against the Green Bay Packers coming up.
Yep. I would start Jonnu over Kelsey just because it seems like Kelsey's losing targets now to Gray and Hopkins. So I think Kelsey's season's going down. Also, if I start Jonnu, I won't be upset if Waddle or Hill get touchdowns. But if I start Kelsey, I will lose my mind if Gray gets touchdowns.
Oh man, don't lose your mind. It's only fantasy football. It's everything that we eat, breathe, and sleep. Right.
Last year was Jonnu's best season, and this year he's on pace to break that.
Interesting. He's like 31 years old, give or take.
95.
So he's 29,
maybe?
Yeah. So, because he's on his 3rd team, because he signed a long deal with the Patriots. He did his 4 years with the Titans.
4th, because he was at Atlanta last year.
Oh, I forgot about his Atlanta hitch.
Yeah, that was his best year, was last year with Atlanta.
Well, I have some PTSD with that, with the Kyle Pitts of it all, so...
Kyle Pitts just isn't as good as Jonnu Smith. What can I say?
Exactly. All right. Buccaneers at the Giants. Not another not particularly close matchup. We both got this one right. Bucs win 30-7. Baker keeps the Bucs in the playoff conversation, and the Giants did not get a spark from DeVito this time. They didn't target Neighbors early. They did target him late, but it was already out of hand before they started actually targeting him. And you don't have a first-round wide receiver and not target him, so I think DeVito lacks in that department. And I did notice Irving and White split the backfield for the Buccaneers, and Bucky erupted for 155 and a touchdown, but it does seem like both running backs are usable currently. Do with that as you may, but they're both scoring touchdowns. So
even Sean Tucker seems to be potentially usable as well, because you never know when he's going to get a touchdown either.
Nah, they had 4 rushing touchdowns from 4 different players. They had Mayfield get one, they had Tucker get one, they had White get one, and they had Irving get one.
It's crazy what this team has turned into, like what they were before Brady got there, when Brady was there, and now with Mayfield. It's just very surprising that it seems like they've been able to keep some success going.
Yeah, and it's never going to shock me if you get a guy that can get 155 yards and a touchdown that you blow out the other team. So it's never, ever, ever going to shock me.
He's the big play running back on that team. I think Bucky Irving's the big play guy. I think Rashad White is the kind of steady receiving back. Sean Tucker's the thumper. it's a nice rotation they have. I don't think I've seen other teams typically have this kind of depth.
I like it, and it's really helping them, and they're leaning on them without Godwin in the lineup because they were leaning on Godwin a lot. I probably would have had them in the last playoff spot if Godwin was still around. That's how much of an offensive contributor that he was early this year.
He was having himself a season before he got hurt.
Mm-hmm. And it was just a happen chance dislocation of the ankle. I don't think it was broken, but I think it's going to take some time to heal. There was some chance that he'd be back for the playoffs, so we'll see.
All right. What do we have next here? We have the Titans at Texans. Titans upset Texans 32-27. There were a lot of times where it felt like the Texans could have put this game away, and they couldn't do it, and they struggled on offense, and the Titans made the Texans' offensive line look terrible. They shut down Mixon, and he couldn't get anything going on the ground. Meanwhile, the Texans' defense somehow decided that all they would do was get sacks, and they wouldn't bother stopping the play otherwise. It's like sacks or nothing. I think they had 7 sacks in the first half. I think they finished with 8 or 9. I can't remember.
Oh boy.
8. They finished with 8 the whole game. So at least Nico had a good week. Kind of bit me in the butt though because his contract value did not go down. So I'm not happy with that at all. But with all our podcast money, maybe we can buy RSO and I can change it.
Yeah, we can see. But man, I feel bad that I made you break down this matchup in the upset of the week. And this wasn't like one of those low scoring upsets where it was like 9-6. This was a high scoring where there was 59 points scored in the game. But I do believe Levis is showing something before Thanksgiving as well. I think his little time off helped him as well. He's not making as many boneheaded mistakes. So he does seem like he's improving. I don't know if that will earn him a shot at the 2025 job, but it doesn't hurt at this point. Ridley and Pollard are having big games. Ridley's really shown up since the Hopkins trade, so that's an interesting... I don't understand why that happened, but I'm grateful that it did happen. Nick Westbrook Akine has another long touchdown. I don't know if these are like couple game aberrations or if this is something that we're looking at long term. And to your point, Mixon having a bad game, I will keep saying until I'm blue in the face, the way to beat the Texans is to stop Mixon and stop the run game. Without the run game, they are not the same team. I don't know why Stroud regressed because that feels like he put the game on his back a lot last year. And it just seems like he's unable to do so far this year.
Missed field goal really hurt them. If they made that, because it was short, I think it was like 28, 29 yards. Kaimi Fairbairn would have made that. It would have tied the game 30-30. They wouldn't have been in a situation where they were in their own red zone, and Stroud wouldn't have ran out the back of his own end zone like a Dan Orlovsky. So there are some small things that could have changed the whole game, but ultimately, I think Tennessee's defense, especially their front line, is much better than people think it is. And the Texans' offensive line has been a problem this entire year. It was a problem last year. It's a problem this year. It's not changed. It's not improved. They haven't really brought anyone else in. So I'm kind of frustrated with the Texans right now.
Yeah, we'll see if they can get back on the winning track against the Jaguars next week. But Alex, we have better news for you here where we both took the Broncos, and the Broncos did defeat the Raiders, which is another one of your teams. So your two of your teams faced off in this one here. But the story out of this here is Minshew breaks his collarbone and is out for the rest of the season. And I think the Raiders' biggest flaw this year was the lack of a run game. And they don't have a running back that's even starting to take a lead in the backfield. So without a run game, they've been struggling this entire year. I think both quarterbacks would be better if they had a running back that could be established and get the run going. And Knicks also threw for 42 times in this game, and they did win. Javonte, 8 rushes, -2 yards, where McLaughlin goes 7 for 44. This backfield's a mess. I wouldn't blame anybody for just washing their hands of this entire backfield for the rest of the year because it's frustrating. And what it tells me is Sean Payton realizes he doesn't have his guy in the backfield because we've seen him run Kamara into the ground. And this will be a team that is on the hunt for a running back in the offseason, in my opinion. Probably a complete back, a 3-down back, if they can find one. I think Cortland Sutton is going to win some folks some leagues this year, and that's a pleasant surprise considering how his career started and how it was going. And it looks like he's finally got a quarterback where he has chemistry with and consistent chemistry with. And before Minshew broke his collarbone, Jacoby Myers was having a big game for the Raiders. So just some interesting tidbits in this game, but did I miss anything in this game, Alex?
Bo Nix looked amazing, as per usual, but
I don't know if he looked amazing, but okay. It's the Raiders.
I think in the last several weeks, I can't remember how many weeks it's been, but the last several weeks, PFF has done tracking, and he's thrown like 0 turnover-worthy plays over the last so many. It's incredible to see his transformation, and considering Cortland Sutton's his best weapon, it's pretty incredible. I don't understand what Denver is doing with their running backs. I don't know why you would have 4 or 5 different guys that you're rushing with. And I don't know how you can't get Javonte Williams going. I don't know what to do. It seems like one guy blows up and then the next week does nothing. So when somebody blows up, immediately switch to a different running back with this offense. That's basically what I'm getting out of this.
Yeah, I don't even know what to make of it. And I own them. And that, by them, I mean Estime and Javonte. And I own 0 Raiders running backs for kind of the same reason, but it ends up being very different. So,
all right. You want to move on to the next matchup then?
Sure.
All right. We've got the Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. You went Seahawks, I went Arizona, and the Seahawks squeaked out a 16-6 win in a snooze fest. So again, this is another Jeff run game matchup. I feel like all you say this week is they didn't have a run game, and neither team did this week.
I'm not understanding, like, if you look at the Eagles' success right now, it's pretty much predicated on the fact that Barkley could run the football. Like, I'm not understanding why teams are getting further and further away from the run game as the season goes on, and it's not working. It's just not working. So, as you said, this game was very weak. And the only 2 bright spots for this entire fantasy matchup were Jackson Smith and Jigba, which I do believe is evolving into the number 1 wide receiver for the Seahawks. I have a bold prediction for the Seahawks in the offseason. I do believe that they could trade DK Metcalf. They probably could part ways with Lockett, and they could have JSN and another receiver side by side in 2025. But that's just a prediction. Trey McBride also was the bright spot for the Cardinals, but they're still not utilizing Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson enough. But this division is proving that any team can win on any given week, and the Seahawks were that team this week.
Do you think this game signals any kind of issues for either team, or do you think this is just a tough divisional matchup and these defenses are getting better?
So usually defenses start great to start off the year, and it takes offenses a little bit of time to catch up. What's baffling to me is there were so many points scored this week, and the run games were pretty weak. So I just don't understand it. And unless defenses are just threatening them to just try to get them to throw the ball more, but it doesn't make sense, I guess. As I said, the way to beat your team is to stop mixing, and it's proven time and time again. Here, I don't understand why Connor and Walker weren't more utilized and when more used, but I digress.
All right. Well, let's move on here to the 49ers at Packers. I never changed my pick after Brock Purdy was declared out, so I stayed with San Francisco. You picked Green Bay. Green Bay won. It seems like the Packers are starting to lean more on Josh Jacobs. I think Love still doesn't look 100%. Neither does Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey missed most of the season so far and had to go to Germany to get experimental treatment on his ailing legs. Doesn't quite have the spring to his step. So I'm wondering what's going to happen with the 49ers on this one, Jeff. But another victory for you.
Yeah, I even messaged you to see if you wanted to change this one, so I made it really easy for you. And you thought I was saying Daniel Jones to San Francisco, and I said, do you want to change your pick of San Francisco? So we had, I triggered another thought for you, but it wasn't exactly where I was going with that. But how are you feeling about your Josh Jacobs not doing well this year pick?
Well, I think he's been pretty inconsistent, to be honest with you. Like, he has some okay games, but
28 points, 19 points. So he's been mostly double digit all year long. He's running back 6 on the year right now.
yeah, and I think that he's had some big weeks, but I think he's had some disappointing weeks throughout the year too. I mean, he had one game where he had 32 rushing attempts. I think they're going to start wearing him down, honestly, because none of the other running backs can stay healthy or get out there. So they're almost exclusively using Jacobs. And I don't know how his body can hold up with that.
Yeah, we will see, but it does seem like that's their winning formula. And the only weapon that was usable for the Niners, which no weapon was usable for the Packers, unfortunately, in my opinion. But the 49ers, Kittle was still okay, even with Brandon Allen in there. I think the 49ers thought they were putting Josh Allen into the lineup because they just saw Allen on a locker, but it turned out to be like his little brother, Brandon Allen, and didn't work out as well.
But yeah, to your point about Jacobs, he has almost 1,000 yards on the ground and 7 touchdowns, and he has 186 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown as well. It's his first receiving touchdown. Did you know that?
Ever?
Yes, ever in the NFL. I think that was it last week or the other week, but yeah, he never had a receiving touchdown in his entire 5 years with Las Vegas.
That's crazy. All right, anything else in this matchup? And we only got 2 left.
Let's wrap it up. Let's go to these other 2.
These were pretty good matchups too for primetime. The Rams and the Eagles, they were pretty close at halftime. I think that was a 6-point game at halftime, but the Philly ended up pulling away and winning by 17, and they won 37-20. Barkley was a big reason for that. A.J. Brown was a big reason for that. But on the Rams side of the ball, Stafford continues to utilize Puka, Kupp, and Williams, and they all had really big games because of it. They're going to be a hard team to beat each week. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, Alex, and you're not going to like this, but I think Philly has to be the favorite to come out of the NFC right now.
I agree. Well, they're up there with the Lions.
I think they're ahead of the Lions now for me.
I don't think that they're ahead of the Lions for me. I think that they are pretty close neck and neck.
They passed your boys, in my opinion. They're going to be a hard team to beat. They have too many weapons.
Yeah, but so are the Lions.
They have a lot less weapons, though, so we'll see.
Do they?
I guess when you include the running backs.
Jameson, we got Laporta, Gibbs, Montgomery. I think it's about 5-5, to be honest with you. I think the Eagles have the best individual piece in Saquon, but I think the other guys are, well, I mean, I guess you can make a comment about A.J. Brown, but A.J. Brown, very inconsistent, high upside player. It's very interesting. A.J. Brown is like a better version of Jameson Williams, and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is better than Devonta Smith, so
I think it's really going to matter where this game is played.
To me, I think Philly's defense is getting better and better. And I really wish Hutchinson never got hurt, so Detroit's defense could be really good too. But
So
it's gonna be interesting.
I think this game's going to be. I think it's going to be the NFC Championship game, and I think it's going to be played in Detroit, which is a big advantage for Detroit. Because if this was played outdoors in the cold in Philly, I don't think Goff has it in him to win an outdoor game in January.
Especially not against Carter in that defensive front too. I mean, even with the Lions having a good offensive line, that is quite the task to go against.
Yeah, because I don't know. I was just looking at my mid-season predictions, and the Lions play at home versus Chicago on Thursday. They play Green Bay the following Thursday, so they get a whole week's rest. So that's an advantage because they play Green Bay. Well, no, Green Bay gets a whole week's rest because they have the night game against the Dolphins. So they're both on full week's rest on a Thursday. Then they have the Bills at home. That's a 50-50 matchup, but because it's at home, I would give it to the Lions. Then they go to Chicago, which should be an easy winnable matchup. Then they go to San Francisco, which is probably, it depends if Purdy's playing or not. If Purdy's playing, it's probably closer to 50-50. Even if you give them that loss, they go 15-2. Like, that's that the Eagles can't surpass that. So they might be the 1 seed already in the NFC.
Yeah, but I liked both these teams before the season even started. And you told me how dumb I was for liking the Lions that much and that the Eagles are too much of a mess.
You agreed with the Eagles mess, though. You were firing Nick Sirianni very
I
early
said
in
I
the
think
season.
I think they're gonna start off struggling, and I think that they're either gonna turn it around or he's gonna end up getting fired. But I think that he has turned into fiery Nick Sirianni, and I
I
think
still
that
don't like
the
him,
team's
but
playing
they
well.
figured out something that worked.
Yeah, he seems like he would be annoying just at
He's
a glance.
immature.
Yeah, Jeff, you gotta stop making everyone into a robot. Everyone's got personality, Jeff. I don't understand why you don't like people with personalities.
Hey, I say that to you a lot.
I know, and I get to throw it back in your face for once.
I know. But to be fair, is the quality that I like least about him is that he's very immature and he handles situations immaturely, especially with that security guard last year and getting into it with the fans this year. He needs to know a place and a time for that stuff, and he needs to know what his role is and how important it is. And he can't let people that don't really impact it, like the fans, get to him, because
All
that
right,
can only get him fired. That can't get him more money or anything like that. That can only get him fired. So you got to realize, like, when you enter a situation, like, if there's no benefit to engaging in it, you shouldn't. And that's kind of how a lot of people look at social media now, because social media could get you fired if you post the wrong thing, but it could never get you hired for a job or anything like that. So make smart decisions, people.
well, Jeff, these guys, they're out there with their emotions. You know, game gets a little stressful. You're gonna release those emotions, Jeff.
Exactly.
This is what you say to me all the time, and now you're for one person, for Nick Sirianni, he has to completely lock it down and be professional.
Yeah, I
Doesn't
also
apply to
think,
everybody, just him.
no, I think the other thing that I don't like about him is his relationship with Jalen Hurts, which does appear to have improved a bit. And I think that's a problem overall if your coach and quarterback aren't seeing eye to eye almost completely.
So that Brian Flores didn't want
Yeah. And Tua still hangs on to that today, and I think that's some of his chip on his shoulder.
All right, we've got one final matchup here. The Monday Night Harbaugh Bowl on ESPN. So the Ravens came to town to the LA Chargers. I picked Baltimore. You picked the Chargers. You picked both LA teams, and I went both bird teams, I guess. Baltimore ended up winning, although first quarter it looked like you might have been right. But man, what is going on with Palmer and Quentin Johnston dropping all of these balls. What's with, I guess Dobbins got hurt early and they weren't able to get anything going after he went down and had to just throw the ball or Herbert ran. What were your takeaways in this game, Jeff?
So, first thing, play of the game was on their own 16 going for 4th and short and getting it. Like, that was the play of the game for the Ravens. If they lost that, they were down 10-0 at that point. And there's a good chance it would be a 17-0 game. And I think that's a lot harder because they have to abandon Henry at that point. And I think it's harder for them to come back at that point. Henry ended up going 24 carries for 140 yards. He's at 221 carries for the year so far. So he's going to get over 300 carries for the year, which is crazy because a lot of people thought Henry was done, but he has a chance at the rushing crown this year with Saquon. So very interesting there. But as far as the receivers, I think it was past their bedtime. This was a very late game on a Monday for them. They had a case of the Mondays. But honestly, there's better days ahead for the Chargers. They do need Dobbins to come back because I think he's a big chunk of the run game here. I do think that they will be enlisting a new running back next year. I think they're going to be in the same boat as other teams that we've talked about, looking for a 3-down running back like the Broncos will be as well. So it'll be interesting to see division rivals be competing and bidding on potential running backs that'll be free agents. One that comes to mind is Aaron Jones. Like, he's having a great year with the Vikings, and he only signed a 1-year deal with the Vikings, so he's going to be a complete free agent next year. So he might be a good stopgap for both of the teams that I mentioned. But I think the Chargers are still a receiving weapon away from being a contender, and I think they still have a shot at the playoffs this year for sure. I think they'll enter as the 6th or the 7th seed, but they are clearly, with Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer, one weapon away. They need to pair with Ladd McConkey, and we'll see what happens.
Ladd McConkey, who continues to catch everything thrown his way. So
yeah, it's still not enough just to have one weapon like that.
So, Jeff, I have another question for you on the Ravens side. When will Deontay Johnson finally have a good game with the Ravens?
In the playoffs. They're saving him for the playoffs.
1 target, no catch.
I know. They're trying to slowly get him involved, but there's no reason to rush him if they're winning either. So it's interesting.
I guess. Yeah.
Cool. But Bateman looked good.
Yeah, Bateman looks like he's turned the corner a little bit. And we had just looked him up offline to it seems like he's been in the league forever, but it's only been like 3 years. This is season 4 for him, sorry. So far, it's his best output production wise. He's gotten more targets and catches before in the same amount of games, but this is the most yards he's gotten 12 games in. This is the most touchdowns he's ever gotten. He might continue to stay fantasy viable, but it's more like a wide receiver 3 or flex.
Yeah, and I think he can be like that for the next 3 to 4 years as well. So there's a lot of people that were turned off by Bateman that you might be able to snag him a little bit later next year.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else to add. Do you?
No, sir. Great week of football, though.
It was a surprising week. It's always nice to have underdogs win and everything get turned on its head. Great week. All right. That does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for listening and downloading this episode. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment, share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Everybody.